And we are live here, friends. Happy Friday, first Friday of the new year, 2025, and kicking it off with another episode of Just Shilling. So, super psyched to have everyone join. If you're not joining live, I'm sure that you'll come in and check this out later on, and we'll get this up on the socials. But really, really excited to kick off the new year and have this conversation. It's been long due that we are going to get a chance to chat today. So, Adrien, before we get into this, I did want to go over some quick house rules. First and foremost, folks, nothing that we share today is going to be financial advice. That is not our responsibility and not what we're looking to do, but we are all adults here, and this is a safe space. Any of the opinions that are shared today are of our own. They do not necessarily represent the organization that we represent, respectively. And, we're probably going to keep it professional here. And if it's probably a little bit too controversial for a family dinner during the holidays, we'll avoid those topics here during this conversation. But let's get into it. So, Adrien, welcome. How's your day going so far?
Thanks, Trevor. Great to be with you. Great to finally have this pod together. I feel like we've been in touch for a while now, so I'm
Yeah.
excited to have this conversation.
Yeah,
So,
we've been dancing around it for a long time, and here's the day. It's finally
for
official, finally
sure,
official. So,
for
you've had an interesting background, and I won't bore the people that are here by kind of going over all the things. They can check out your LinkedIn profile to really see where this all began. But you made the jump from being a musician to diving into the tech world. So, what was kind of that turning point for you, and what did you bring from your music background into your tech ventures?
yeah. Um, it's a question I get a lot because those two spaces seem very different, but I find that there are a lot more parallels than might be obvious at first.
Yeah.
There were several things. I think first of all, during my career in music, one of the most, let's say, potent issues I came across were payments. The frustration around royalty payments and how slow those can be, how many intermediaries are along that payment flow. And then as a record label owner, the need to pay artists who were in different countries, and so having to pay really high fees for these cross-border payments. So that was something that came up like very early on, as really a pain point that the industry had. So being able to leverage that was definitely something that allowed me to then sort of enter the tech space with a focus and with a degree of experience around a specific pain point that I felt like I could address in a meaningful way. But I think there are a lot of other skills that that can sort of be transposed to an entrepreneurship startup type of career. I think one of them, which I find not super obvious, is the fact that when you're building a career in music, you've got to build a fan base, right? You've got to
Yes.
sort of attract your customers, right? And that is definitely something that a startup entrepreneur needs to be able to do, right? I mean, in Web3, where we talk about community a lot, and there's a great parallel between a fan base and a community. And so I think there are a lot of learnings that I've been able to apply to that. But then it's a lot of soft skills, right? How do you manage people? How do you bring people into the project that you're building, and to some leadership elements there. And then music is a tough business. You've got to figure out your way through, deal with people who want to take advantage of you because they've got distribution power or whatever it is. And so you definitely sort of build your business chops in that industry, and that has been helpful as well.
Yeah. So, you talked about this, you just touched upon it, that these royalty payments in the music industry have kind of been a pain point for some time. So, can you walk us back a little bit and kind of expose a little bit of the frustrations that you face specifically firsthand, and what kind of really drove you to explore blockchain as a solution for those problems?
Yeah. I'll give you a very specific example, which unfortunately is not uncommon for musicians. I wrote a song that eventually made it on the album of this Chilean artist called Kikineda, and he was pretty big at the time. You know, definitely sold a good amount of copies. These were still CDs, right? And so when when you're a songwriter on an album, you get a portion of the royalties, right, for each album sale. And these are composition sort of royalties, right? Songwriting royalties. And so the way that works when the album is released in a different geography is that the local organization is supposed to collect all the data around how many sales have happened, and then require that these royalties be paid by by the label or whoever is putting that music out, and then they are eventually going to communicate that information to another organization in the country where you are as a songwriter, right? And these two organizations, they're called like performance rights organizations. In the U.S., people might have heard of BMI and
Yep.
ASCAP, right? Well, each country has their own, sometimes multiple. And then, if you have a publisher, your publisher is going to be in correspondence with that organization, and eventually you get the funds, right? So that entire flow takes a lot of time. For me, it took more than 2 years, but that's not so uncommon, right? Like, and it's getting better, but back in the day, I'd say for international performance rights royalties, you would usually wait 12 to 18 months. That was sort of the average. So 24 was a bit longer, but I had to deal with the Chilean organization. But so anyways, this is an issue that happens all the time. Collaboration has become more and more global in the music industry. And so it's very normal for artists to have to rely on all these intermediaries to make sure payments go through before they can be paid out, right? So from a cash flow perspective, the music industry is really, really tough, right? You do a job and you're paid 2 years later. Makes no sense. So that was that experience. And fast forward a couple years later, I was in grad school doing my MBA, and one of my professors started sort of bringing us up to speed with what was happening in crypto and in blockchain, and started talking about smart contracts. And that really sort of like lit up the light bulb for me, right? Where I was like,
Yeah.
wait, you can automate money? Like this is fantastic. So obviously, having had that experience, I immediately thought about that pain point. And so that was what eventually convinced me to start my own business and try to ramp up a startup with that specific goal to fix the music industry. Yeah.
So bring us to that. I mean, royalty payments kind of in the music industry. And this was your first crypto project, I believe, right? So
Yeah.
I think at the time, if I recall our conversation, you felt that it was like a bit ahead of its time. So can you kind of bring us into that, what you were thinking then, and what's it like to work on a startup when you feel it's a little bit ahead of your time? What were some of the kind of lessons learned from that experience?
It's very challenging. It's very challenging for several reasons. So this was like 2018. The infrastructure was still fairly nascent, right? If for those who were in crypto in 2018 and remember what it was like to transact on chain, it was pretty complex, right? The need to have to really manage wallets, and stable coins really weren't established yet. And so a lot of the transactions usually would happen in the native tokens like Ethereum on Ethereum, or Matic on Polygon, etc. So there were challenges at the technical level, right? But then those usually mean that it's quite difficult to actually put a product in front of your potential customers, right? That you can demonstrate that feels like it's ready for enterprise type of adoption. And so that was definitely a big challenge for us. I think pretty quickly we realized that there were sort of pretty big gaps in terms of where the technology was and what was required for for the big record labels or the big publishers to want to adopt this type of technology. And so we had to pivot into sort of what is necessary to sort of lay the groundwork so that these technologies can eventually be adopted, right? And so, one of the first learnings, I guess, for me was the need to just really be in tune with where the market's at, where your customers are at, and how do you pivot and adapt to that, right? And I think the only way you're able to do that is by actually, trying, right? You got to put some stuff out. You got to ship some product to be able to get that feedback. And I forget who says, it's by putting product out that you get information, by doing that you get information, right? Yeah. I think that's very true. So that was a big learning. I think, I still believe this will happen. The music industry will eventually adopt this type of technology, but we were probably 10 years too early back then.
Yeah. So, your first encounter was with Ethereum and smart contracts, and that was, several years ago, and it feels like dinosaur years here in this industry because one is like several. But what's your kind of mentality? How has it changed in just what you've seen kind of progress with Ethereum and smart contracts to present day so far?
Yeah, I think the thing I'm most excited about is how the technology is being abstracted, right? I always thought that blockchain was primarily a back-end innovation. And, I think some purists sometimes get a little bit offended when I say that, but the reality is, these are rails, right? It's a way for data to be stored and shared, and end users don't necessarily need to, or quite frankly, don't want to, know what's happening behind the hood. What they want to know is like, what is the value that is provided to them through the use of that technology? So anything that touches abstraction, I think is really fantastic, right? We've started seeing that concept sort of appear around like wallet abstraction.
Yes.
And seeing crypto wallets that are becoming easier and easier to use. You can sign up with email. You no longer need to, write down your private key on a piece of paper, your seed phrase on a piece of paper that you'll eventually lose. And so that experience is getting better. Then, we've started seeing chain abstraction. And I think that's really necessary. I mean, I kind of see all the different blockchains as like little, crypto nations, if you will.
Yes.
And right now it's still pretty difficult to navigate between these nations, right? Those sort of crypto borders are very well sort of established and hard to go through. And so I think chain abstraction is going to allow us to more easily navigate that. And to draw an analogy to sort of the real world economy, there was a boom in global GDP when international trade became facilitated, right? Because we could have money movements across nations, right? And, just the markets become much bigger and everything can scale. I think we're going to see a similar sort of impact in crypto, where when chain abstraction is really developed and you don't need to worry anymore whether you're on Polygon, the other person's on Base or on BNB chain or whatever it is, and you can just transact and sort of do business with each other easily. That's when everything's going to really start growing. So chain abstraction, I think, is really really important. There's a final sort of degree of abstraction that I've been talking about more recently, which I call stablecoin abstraction, and this obviously refers more specifically to the payments space. But right now we're seeing so many different stablecoins pop up. If you look on DeFi Llama, which is sort of
Yeah.
like so analytics dashboard,
Love DeFi Llama.
more
Yeah.
than 200 stable coins listed.
Mm.
Um, that's a lot of different types of coins. Most of them are, USD denominated. So that's a lot of fragmentation, and obviously one coin can live on multiple chains. And the again, looking at the end user, we should be able to transact regardless of what stablecoin we're sending each other, right? And I think that it shouldn't matter which stablecoin you have. You just want to have $100 worth of money.
Yeah.
And so stablecoin abstraction is something that I've been paying a lot of or putting a lot of thought into, and obviously with Reveel we're very focused on that.
Yes, and this is a wonderful transition. I think that one of the analogies when we first chatted was, imagine if I had T-Mobile and you had AT&T and I couldn't call you.
Right? Exactly.
Or if you were using Gmail and I was using Yahoo and we couldn't send each other emails. I mean, imagine how crazy that sounds, but that's something that we dealt with back in the earlier days of the internet, and I feel like things are really evolving, especially when it comes to stable coins. So this is a great transition, as I mentioned before. So bring us to Reveel and tell us a little bit what Reveel is all about, and how did you come up with the name?
Yeah. So Reveel is really building peer-to-peer payments infrastructure, right? We started by building a peer-to-peer payments application that facilitates on-chain payments leveraging stablecoins, and very much still with this sort of focus on the end user and how do we make this technology simple. We realized that users were very siloed, right? Like if you had, if you were used to transacting on BNB chain and you wanted to transact with someone that's on the base network, that was difficult, right? And so we started building, this application to make it easier and easier for people to be able to transact with each other, even when they're on different networks. To your point about like having to connect people across different networks. And so we've landed to our latest innovation that we just announced and that we're rolling out very soon, which we call Pay ID, which is really a universal stablecoin ID. So it's like, your payment name, if you will, and it allows a user to receive any stablecoin from any chain and define really what is their preferred stablecoin and preferred chain. So, I can just tag you at Trevor and send you whatever I have, and that might be USDC on base. And on the back end, you've said, well, if I receive money through my Pay ID, I actually want that to land in my wallet as USDT on BNB chain, right? And so this really abstracts, right, not just sort of wallets and chains, but even stable coins to facilitate this unified payment experience on top of all the different networks and on top of all the different stable coins. And so that's our latest product. We're very, very excited to make it live. We've got sort of our early community using it right now in the application in our peer-to-peer payments app, with really great feedback, and we'll be sort of opening claims for the community very soon.
This is awesome. And we're going to go back to the community aspect of that, because I think that anyone, regardless of how much time you spent in the space, that community is always something that's very important in continuing to foster, that. But, talk to us a little bit about maybe just some of the horror stories, because there may be people here that are listening, Adrien, that have maybe never maybe never done a crypto transaction before. They've never encountered trying to have someone accept a particular stable coin. that may be on a different network. And, I'm going to be honest, I'll be vulnerable to say that I've lost money by sending the wrong USDT or the wrong USDC from one account. I mean, I've done that with crypto as well, too. And I think that's one of those hard lessons that you learn, and you definitely learn not to make it again. So can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about some of the horror stories that you've heard or maybe even personally encountered yourself? And have you done any research in terms of maybe just like how much money is lost during these kind of lost transactions where they kind of just go into the void?
Yeah, it's a great question. There are a lot of sort of use cases where this money can potentially get lost. I think the two that come up the most regularly are directly between two folks who wanna interact. So now if you're in the space, it's very common that you'll work with a developer or a designer for some time, and then they prefer to be paid in stablecoin. And usually the conversation goes something like this: like the person says, "Hey, can you pay me in USDT?" And I'll say, "You know what? USDC is a lot more convenient for me. Can we do that on Base?" And then they're like, "Oh no, like I really need USDT, but okay, you can do it on Base." And so I have to like swap USDC to USDT. And then they send me their wallet information, and I've got to make sure it's the right wallet on the right network, and then eventually I'll do the transaction, right? But so there's this back and forth, that's needed, and sort of we have to come to a consensus around how we're going to do the transaction and where, which is quite frankly unnecessary if you think of other sort of payment methods, right? That's one use case. Another that's very common, and we get a lot of feedback around that, is people who send funds to maybe their centralized account on
Yeah.
a big exchange. And the way these exchanges work is usually under your account, you have a specific address for a specific coin on a specific chain, right? So if you're sending ETH on ETH, you got to send it to that address, right? And if by mistake you send USDC on ETH, then that can create issues. Or maybe you're sending ETH to a different address. So there are a lot of people, just because it's so specific, who sort of overlook a detail and send money to the wrong address. And what that usually entails is having to reach customer support of the exchange and trying to figure out whether they can recover it. Most of the time, it's really hard to just even get a hold of them. And so you're right, there's a lot of money lost there. I don't have specific numbers, or not recent at least, but if you just even search for tweets, you'll see that it's quite a frequent issue. So I think that is definitely something important. But the way I think about it too is, this type of degree of involvement around a transaction is not scalable. We are open to doing it because we've been in this space for a while, and we understand the tech, and we've gotten used to this degree of complexity. But it's a real blocker for broader adoption, right? And there's a reason why most people only engage with crypto through bigger centralized exchanges, right? It's because the user experience has, been better because there is a degree of abstraction through the custodial model. But that also prevents you from, sort of tapping into a lot of the new products that are coming up on chain. And so we really have to simplify the experience in order to be able to onboard more people. And that's where I see the biggest opportunity, really.
And I think that that's really something that will be, crucial when it comes to trying to get mass adoption and really having more people utilize this. Because as you mentioned, right, several years ago, some of the even user interfaces of some of this, it's not really that dramatically different. And, one of the things that I was kind of thinking about, and maybe this comes from community involvement and just kind of hearing feedback, but, what were some of the biggest, I would say, technical or logistic kind of challenges that you faced, even getting it to the point of where you are right now?
Um, Building an application that is multi-chain or chain agnostic is complicated from a technical perspective, right? And that's why the vast majority of applications live on a single on a single chain, right? And so that is definitely where the challenge lies for us, right? It's like, how do we make sure we can easily integrate all these different networks and make sure that liquidity can move across these networks, right? And so that someone on network A can pay someone on network B, and that experience is really smooth and abstracted. So that's really where the complexity lies. The community has been crucial for us in understanding, which networks do we prioritize, which tokens. We have a Discord where we have about 30,000 community members, and we get a lot of feedback from them there. We try to be, as really as open as possible around our development, and share mock-ups of what we're building, and then invite sort of a core group of them to test. And that's really what allows us to build the roadmap, get feedback, and continue to iterate. So to some degree, you can call it building in public. I think sort of community led product development is really interesting. There are some things that are going to come up that you might not have thought of. On the other hand, I'm still a big proponent of having a vision and making sure you don't deviate from that. But there's a balance that you need to strike between sort of following the initial intention and what comes up through the community.
Yeah. So let's kind of shift gears here, Adrien, and talk a little bit more about Reveal. And I love, having these conversations, and for people that work at these different organizations that are making positive strides in the space, to be able to really kind of give us a insider's peek into your organization, right? So what are some things that make Reveal special in terms of your culture and building a team and just getting the right people that, one, share a common vision? Because I'm sure that can be quite difficult with just so many different individuals and personalities in the space. So how did you kind of all make that work from the get-go?
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, I don't necessarily know what makes us different, because I live within Reveal, and it's hard to get a real glimpse into other organizations. But I think that some of the things that have worked really well for us is that we've made sure to work very collaboratively, and we have a super flat organization, and work together around projects. And so even though we're fully remote, and we have team members pretty much all around the world, we're able to have a sense of togetherness, which has been surprising to me almost to some degree, right? And so I think that has been super precious, because startup journey is tough, right? You go through ups and downs, and when you're going through those harder moments, having a team that is cohesive and will stick together is crucial. And that's something that I'm super proud of in terms of the team that we've built together. I attribute that to a very sort of open and transparent sort of leadership style that I like to have, but also to this collaborative approach where you can get involved with a lot of different things, and so you will work with pretty much everyone on the team at some point, and that allows us to really build bonds.
Nice, nice. And kind of shifting back to the community part of this, I know that you had mentioned before that, creating a community in this industry is kind of like growing a fan base in music. So talk to us a little bit about some of your experience from the music industry that kind of helped influence your approach to community building? And what's something that's really kind of surprised you most about this process?
That's a good question. I have to say, when I started building a community for my band back in the day, these were like the early like MySpace days, right? And then the early Facebook days, right? So the tools that we had to manage a community were very different. I think one of the things that I realized too late back then was that you don't want to be dependent on the platforms that you
Okay.
use, and we should have, back with my band, immediately asked to collect emails from our fan base so that we could reach them at any point in time. And I think now that has become, established as good practice, even phone numbers, right? Again, being able to text your communities. In this iteration with Reveel, we were able to collect emails and make sure we're not dependent of platforms, which I think is really precious. We have sort of followed the same core principles as I would have or did in music, which is, involving the community, sharing as much as possible our vision, right, and how we see the world evolving, because in the end, that's what people are going to get attached to, and making sure that people feel like they can contribute if they want to, right? In music, we often talk about super fans, those who will spread the word, or is it Taylor Swift has like the Swifties, right? And
Yes.
they all have their own little armies of fans, right? And finding who are your ambassadors within a community is also super important. And that's usually what helps it grow, right? Because they're going to be the ones sharing on socials each time you have, a new product update or something that you're shipping. So yeah, following all those principles has been super helpful for us. And we've built a really great community. Our socials have been strong, and our email list even stronger. And that I think is really important in building companies today, because building technology is gonna get easier and easier, right? And we can get into the whole AI and agentic space if we want to, but I think building software is gonna get easier and easier. The challenge is going to be distribution, right? How do you make sure you're able to actually bring that product to market to a broad number of people? And so at the same time as we've been building our product at Reveel, we've tried as hard as possible to also build our distribution, so that we can make sure that we're successful when the products are ready to be able to bring them to market.
Yeah. And speaking of that next kind of phase, and I'm sure that most people are aware, and if they're not, one of the kind of biggest barriers to crypto adoption, I feel like, is just the overall complexity of the space. And what do you think is the kind of key to making this technology feel as easy as it is to use, your traditional banking app, or the average person can really kind of say, you know what, this isn't so hard, or maybe the analogy goes like, so easy that even my grandma can use it.
Yeah, the grandma test is always a good one. I mean, look, this goes back to the abstraction, topic that we were mentioning before. I think that the goal is to have users be able to perform whatever actions they need to do without having to educate them on new ways of being. It should be as natural as possible. I do think that AI is going to help that a lot. We're probably going to see a big shift in terms of what is the primary interface with applications, and and that is gonna simplify a lot of things, right? Right now, we're mainly using graphic interfaces, and we've got to manage all these different buttons and selecting chains and then doing transaction inputting information, etc. Once the interface becomes AI enabled, a lot of that can be automated, and so I think that is really going to help adoption. Not to say that I think AI agents are going to adopt the technology maybe even faster than humans are, right? I recently published a couple of projections that I have for the stablecoin space, and one of them is that agent to agent transactions is
Yes.
going to blow up this year. I say it's going to be worth $1 trillion in volume, $1 trillion in volume. We'll see if it blows up that quickly, but I think that could be possible. And obviously, it's becoming a big theme in the industry right now. So I think we'll see a lot of innovation there. And even though this may be a bit meme-ish right now, I think all the innovation that's happening around AI agents now will unlock use of AI in crypto products in general. So I think that it's a super interesting space to follow that will change the way we engage with these products and therefore make it more accessible.
Yeah. It's interesting too with the recent kind of correlation between memes and AI agents. And, a lot of these things, they start off as jokes, but then they become quite practical in their use cases, right? And, it starts off as hee hee ha ha, and then we find out that there's actually a true potential use case in there somewhere that can be used in so many different applications. So, your growth overall for Reveel has been pretty impressive, especially kind of in such this competitive space. So, as your company scales, how do you kind of keep the mission and the vision clear to ensure that your team really is staying focused on what matters?
It's a great question. It's a great question. I mean, our North Star is providing sort of peer-to-peer payments solutions that just help entities and people connect across different networks, right? We want to make sure that you don't feel like you're in a silo when it comes to transacting with other folks, and so that remains sort of the core of our mission. How we enable that is where we need to be able to adapt to the market, to the user feedback we get, to sort of the inbound requests. What's been really interesting in the announcement of PayID that we did in mid-December is that we've gotten a lot of inbound requests from, for instance, gaming applications or gaming developers who want to integrate peer-to-peer payments into their applications. And so we're learning that there are new opportunities that might not have been as obvious for us that we can pursue. And so as long as we're helping connect people across these different networks, I think we're on the right track. Obviously, then there are certain opportunity zones, right, or windows of opportunity that you've got to capture, right? I think bringing it back to AI and agents, this could be one right now, right? And I've been looking a lot at what's happening with these different sort of crypto agents and thinking a lot about how payments will fit into that. And so right now we're obviously we're building our core tech. That doesn't change, but we're also looking at how can we fit that tech into use cases that are popping up, and that's, I guess, part of the gig as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that should definitely not be overlooked in any organization's journey is the partnerships that they build, and you all have some pretty impressive partnerships. So kind of help walk me through the mindset and what are some of the characteristics or qualities that you look for in a mutually kind of productive partnership where all parties actually benefit from this. And one of the things that, is also kind of maybe a bit negative in our space is that sometimes you'll see just these news releases and these partnerships that when you really kind of start to unpeel things back a little bit, you see there's really no meat to that at all. So talk to me a little bit about the partnership that you've built so far, Adrien, and the strategy behind that.
Yeah, it's you're right. We see a lot of sort of buzz sometimes with not a lot of follow through. We've been quite fortunate because we have investment from Binance Labs, and that has allowed us to build a really strong relationship to the entire Binance ecosystem. And so we've done several partnerships with the BNB chain. And I believe that this year we were the fastest growing peer-to-peer payments application on BNB chain, and that's thank you. And that's in part due to those partnerships. I think obviously a good partnership should create value for both sides of the equation, and that's usually what we look for. For us specifically, it usually means tapping into a new community of users that we want to connect to our entire network and infrastructure, or being able to leverage the technology for a new use case, so we can sort of add on to to the scale of what the technology could grow into. Yeah. And so obviously chains have been really important partners for us in order to facilitate the connection of these different networks. That's super important. We're building relationships now with the stablecoin issuers. We're building relationships with all the applications that have significant communities, or even groups that represent multiple applications that might be on different chains and want to be able to connect all these users across these networks. So yeah, there's a lot that's happening right now, and for us, a good amount of that is like figuring out how do we plug our tech into into applications and make sure we can connect those users to the broader network.
Nice. And I know that you've gone to different speaking engagements, you've been on big stages, you've had conversations with a lot of different individuals and made some impressive strides. But is there any part of kind of public recognition that has been fulfilling for you, or maybe even felt a bit serendipitous at all?
It's always nice to get recognition. I do my best to stay focused on sort of the metrics that matter most, and don't get me wrong, like we were one of the winners of the Paris Blockchain Week this year, and through that got to pitch on the main stage to Tim Draper, and that's a fantastic experience, no doubt about it. And we celebrated that win. How much it actually moves the needle in terms of building a venture is debatable. Yes, it helps. It doesn't move the needle all that much, right? And so I try to stay focused on that as much as I can, because in the end, we want to build tech that's going to change the way we engage with payments. And yes, speaking on a nice stage is sometimes necessary in order to share the message and make sure people are aware of what we're building. But I think I get a lot more gratification from working with the team and being able to ship product that then gets good adoption, right? For instance, in the first 2 weeks of announcing PayID, we had over 100,000 signups, right? That is super gratifying, right? Because it's validation of the product, right? Not just of the vision or the story we're telling. And that means a lot to me and to the team.
And this is a great transition as well, too, because as you kind of think back, on your journey with Reveel, and it's interesting, right? Like once you've quote unquote made it, then everyone wants to give you the accolades and the praise. But when you're going through it, you can sometimes feel that, you may be alone, or that there's, especially at those darkest moments. So what Was there ever a moment where you felt like, you know what? Yes, we're on the right path here. I'm going to continue and push forward no matter what.
Yeah. I feel like there are a lot of these moments almost all the time. And, I think one thing I've learned about, starting a business is that it's a rodeo. And I don't mean like 1 week is good, 1 week is bad. It's like within the same day, it's great and it's really hard. Um, and so, I have these mini moments pretty much every day where something goes wrong. And usually, when you're the founder, a lot of the issues that the companies have escalate back to you, and so you deal with a lot of things that are going wrong. But at the same time, you get validation from a customer that likes what you're doing, or new adoption, or investors, or whatever it is. And so you go through all these emotions on a daily basis. I think that is part of what's so challenging and yet so rewarding at the same time.
And blockchain and crypto, I mean, I think that we still have a lot of misconceptions about the space, and there are a lot of people that are still new to this industry or looking to maybe even make that transition. So what would you say? I mean, I know there are so many that can come to mind, but what was probably one of the biggest myths that you like to debunk, especially for those that are curious about making that transition into the industry today?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know that there's a specific myth I want to debunk. I think that you know
Maybe the better question is, what's something that you thought about this space before you got into it, and now that you have that beauty of hindsight looking back, that you can kind of quell those kind of those thoughts?
Yeah, I think at the very beginning, struggled to see how broad this technology could be. I
Mm,
mean, payments, gaming, social platforms, DePIN, decentralized science. Like it will eventually touch potentially all of the different sectors, right? And I didn't even talk about logistics and supply chain, right? So I think I didn't see immediately how big this could be, and what obviously what grabs the attention at first is trading, right? How do I invest in a specific token, or something like that? If if that's not for you, I would recommend that people still try to find information around how the technology is going to change the space they work in, because most likely it will. And there are some really cool projects that are really not about like investing in meme coins and all that, but really about building better systems and better infrastructure for pretty much every industry. So that would be sort of the point I'd want to highlight, and definitely make sure people research and educate themselves on the specific sector they're in or whatever they're interested in.
yeah, for sure. So talk to us a little bit more. I know that time is almost running out here. I wanted just to get maybe a little bit more clarity or understanding on really kind of what Pay ID is, and to help us really understand, where you are today, and maybe a little bit about what your plans are in the future, and how this can really kind of reshape the global transactions over the upcoming years here.
Yeah. So Pay ID, to make it very simple, is a payment tag that a user can have, right? So I might have at Adrien, for instance, you might have Trevor, whatever it is, and that tag can be embedded into any application, connected to another username, and allow for payments between these two entities regardless of where it's embedded, right? So it's almost as if you could use, whatever your Instagram handle in any app, and if you were tagged in, Twitter, you could see that in Instagram, right?
Yeah.
So it's really building interoperable is a bit of a complicated word to say, universal payment network that just works wherever it's embedded and connects users across these different applications. The vision for us is it should not matter what product you're using or in which application you currently are. You should be able to pay anyone, anywhere, as quickly as you want. And so that's really what we're building right now. This is live in our own peer-to-peer payments application right now and being tested by sort of our core community. And we're rolling it out very soon for people to be able to register their pay ID, their tag, right? And we're talking to a lot of very exciting partners who want to integrate pay ID into their applications. And that's really where a lot of the effort is going to be for us next. It's making sure we can get a lot of developers to integrate that into their platforms, and make sure that a user behind that pay ID can connect whatever payment solution they want, right? You might want funds to automatically arrive in your checking account, right? And so how do we make sure that that's possible? Or you might want funds to arrive in your Coinbase account or in a custodial wallet or non-custodial wallet. So being able to offer that flexibility so that we can really connect everyone through payments is where a lot of the effort is right now.
And being in the payment space, I think it would be remiss for us not to talk about potential implications of, I know that I recently spoke about this, but the changes with MiCA, other kind of stablecoin regulations and the kind of regulatory clarity or lack thereof in certain jurisdictions. So how are you thinking about that, Adrien, and how that may impact your business moving forward?
Yeah, I think MiCA has been now instated for, I guess, 3 days. So that's a really big positive, I think, for the space, being able to have the regulatory clarity around stablecoins is going to help adoption for sure. Bigger entities will feel comfortable starting to experiment with with a new type of payment rails that has been approved by regulators, as long as the partnerships they have obviously abide by the MiCA rules. In the US, we don't yet have a regulatory framework around stablecoins, but there's one that's been in the works. Most people think that we're going to see something pass through Congress this year. I believe that's the case too. So that's going to be a big unlock as well. I think that this is also somewhat reflected by the stablecoin market cap that has been growing. We're now past $200 billion in stablecoins. I think towards the end of next year, regulation having been in place, we're going to see a lot of bigger companies start to experiment in this space or want to capture part of the value, because it's a very lucrative business to be issuing stable coins. And so I think we'll see a lot of the big banks, maybe some of the big tech companies, release their own stable coins. And I expect that market cap to shoot up to 500 billion at some point in 2025. And that will be mainly because regulations are instated, and therefore, Fortune 500 companies feel more comfortable experimenting with the technology.
Are there any other kind of, I would say, positive outlooks that you have in the kind of short term and long term going into the future here?
Yeah, I think that we've seen insane volume growth in transaction volume in stablecoins. The total volume of stablecoins in 2024 has surpassed the volume that is processed through the Visa network. Now, granted, there's a lot of trading, there are bots, etc. So if you sort of adjust that, we're not quite yet at volume seen by the Visa network. But I think this year we're probably going to get close, and so that's definitely something I'm looking at. I think it'll be facilitated by, companies like Stripe, for instance, who have acquired Bridge for over $1 billion, who are going to make it a lot easier for merchants to integrate stablecoin rails and accept stablecoins, as well as potentially some POSs who will, allow stablecoin payments at your local coffee store, etc. So I think that will really help adoption this year, and volume is gonna ramp up significantly.
Fantastic. Well, we're almost out of time here, and I would love to wrap this up with maybe sharing the best place that folks can continue to keep up with all of the developments that are going on with Reveal. And also too, I just recalled you never talked about how did you come up with the name?
Oh yeah. So the name initially came from I'm like going back into
Yeah,
like,
the Wayback Machine.
cramming with the team on like what do we call this. So the first product we launched with Reveal was actually a revenue share protocol, and the idea was to just bring transparency to revenue sharing and kind of like revealing how that was where revenue was going and how it was distributed. And so that's where it came from. I feel like there's a new sense that has emerged now with the Pay ID, where in a sense we're letting people connect across these different networks and sort of allowing them to be seen or to be reached wherever they are. And so yeah, the Reveal, the Reveal Pay ID is sort of the next iteration of that. And actually, Reveal.id is where people can reach us. That's our website. There are links to all our socials there, and it's easy to remember. Reveal.id.
Fantastic. And also, what's the best way for folks to get in touch with you? Anything else that's kind of going on right now? Are you guys looking to expand? Are you hiring? Are you open to internships? There's people out here that are listening and part of our community that are always looking to volunteer, or maybe just have a soundboard, kind of throw some
Yeah.
ideas your way. So how can, the people that are part of our community and folks that may be a little bit new here or just seeing this platform for the first time and will all probably listen to this or view this in the future, what are some things that you're looking for from the community, and how can we be a part of really helping bring this to the next level?
Yeah, I appreciate that. We are hiring. We're looking for senior developers to join the team, at least one there. We do regularly take in interns, usually, well, actually both on the business and the product side. So that, that's a possibility if you're fairly new to the space, but you feel like you can provide value by rolling up your sleeves and you want to learn, shoot me a message. The best way to reach me is LinkedIn or Twitter. Adrien Stern, one word, is usually how you'll find me on most platforms. So yeah, definitely reach out to me, send me a DM, tell me about your background, and we'll see if there's a fit. But we're growing, and I tell people to like follow us on both Twitter and LinkedIn, because we'll be posting job opportunities as we continue to grow. And this year should be one where we're looking to bring a couple of people onto the team. So plenty of opportunities will be announced soon enough.
And where are you based out of? Are you in Brooklyn most of the time?
Yeah, I'm based in Brooklyn, and we're a decentralized team, so we've got folks all over the place. We usually work on U.S. hours though, but we try to get together a few times a year,
Nice.
get some FaceTime, strategize, hack a little bit, and it's a lot of fun.
and have fun, man. Well, I think that's what it's all about. So thank you, Adrien. This has been fantastic conversation. I'm
Yeah,
so,
Trevor, thanks so much for having me on. Really
yes,
enjoyed it.
so grateful for you to be the first of the new year in 2025. I'm looking forward to some awesome work on your behalf and continued awesome conversations here at Just Shilling, folks. So there's a million things that you can be doing in the world, but you chose to spend your Friday afternoon with us here, and I am very grateful for that. So thank you, everyone. Be safe, enjoy, take care, and look forward to some short clips and the full video being uploaded to the YouTube soon. Take care, everyone. Have a great weekend. Bye,
Bye.
y'all. All right.